Rain poured over the quiet town as the neon sign of a small roadside diner flickered in the night. The streets were almost empty, except for the few cars that splashed through puddles before disappearing into the fog. Inside the diner, the smell of coffee and grilled sandwiches filled the air, and soft music played from an old radio near the counter. Emily, a young waitress in her mid-20s, was wiping down tables. Her eyes were tired, and her hands ached from hours of serving customers. But she kept moving. She had rent due in 2 days, her brother's school fees to pay, and not enough tips to cover both. Still, she smiled whenever someone entered because she believed kindness cost nothing. The night dragged on, the clock ticking past 11. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the glass like a rhythm of exhaustion. Emily looked out the window and sighed, wondering if she would make it home without getting soaked again. Her manager, Mr. Turner, was counting money at the counter, muttering about how slow business had been. "You can go soon," he said without looking up. "Just make sure the tables are spotless." Emily nodded, pretending not to notice that he'd forgotten to split the tip jar fairly again. As she stacked plates and wiped the last booth, the door creaked open. The small bell above it jingled weakly. A gust of cold wind blew in, along with a man who looked like he had walked straight out of a storm. His clothes were soaked, his beard untrimmed, and his shoes caked with mud. He carried an old, beaten-up guitar case that looked older than him. For a moment, everyone in the diner turned to look, and then quickly looked away. No one wanted trouble this late at night. Emily paused, watching him as he stood by the door. He looked unsure whether to come in or leave. Water dripped from his sleeves onto the floor. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "Would you like a seat?" The man hesitated, then nodded. He chose the farthest booth as if afraid to disturb anyone. Emily brought him a menu, but he pushed it away gently. "I don't have money," he said in a low voice. "But if you let me play a song or two, maybe I can earn a meal." Before Emily could respond, Mr. Turner overheard and barked from the counter. "This isn't a charity. We don't feed beggars." The few customers still eating pretended not to hear. Emily froze, feeling a mix of pity and anger. The man's shoulders dropped and he turned to leave. She looked at the untouched bowl of soup cooling near the counter, something a customer had sent back, and made a quick decision. "Wait," she said, running after him. "Sit down, please." She brought him the soup and some bread. "It's on me," she whispered. "You don't have to play if you're tired." The man looked at her, eyes shining under the dim light. "You're kind," he said simply. "But I'd still like to play." He carefully opened the guitar case, pulling out a weathered instrument with scratches across its body. Emily noticed how gently he held it like something precious. When he began to play, the diner changed. The noise of rain faded into the background. The notes from his guitar filled the room, soft, deep, and full of feeling. It was the kind of music that didn't just sound nice. It meant something. Even the grumpy manager looked up. The melody rose and fell like a story told without words. The man's fingers moved with confidence and emotion. Each chord carried years of pain and memories. Emily stood still, tray in hand, unable to move. She had never heard anything so beautiful. The customers who had been scrolling through their phones slowly lifted their heads. One woman wiped a tear from her eye. When the last note faded, silence filled the air. Then came a quiet round of applause, soft but real. The man smiled faintly, almost shyly. "Thank you," he said, setting the guitar down. Emily felt something stir inside her. A strange warmth. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the feeling of doing something right. She sat across from him for a moment and asked, "What's your name?" He replied, "Jack," simple and calm. She nodded. "I'm Emily, Mr. Turner pretended to busy himself with receipts, but even he couldn't hide the look of surprise on his face. Emily brought Jack another piece of bread and filled his cup with hot coffee. "You don't owe me anything," she said quietly. "Music like that deserves more than money." Jack smiled again. "You'd be surprised how many people disagree," he said. His voice was rough but kind, like someone who had seen too much of the world. As the clock neared midnight, the diner emptied. The rain finally slowed. Jack thanked Emily again and promised to return one day to repay her kindness. She waved it off, saying, "Just stay warm out there." But as he walked into the mist, guitar on his back, something in Emily's heart told her this wasn't the last she'd see of him. That night, she cleaned the last table with a quiet smile. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel the weight of her worries. Kindness had cost her a bowl of soup, but it had given her something priceless. A reminder that goodness still mattered even when no one was watching. And outside, under the streetlight, the homeless man stopped for a moment, looked back at the diner and whispered to himself, "There's still hope in the world," before disappearing into the rainy night. The next morning the rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet. The diner opened early, sunlight breaking through the clouds as Emily began her shift. She couldn't stop thinking about the man from last night, the one with the guitar and quiet eyes. Something about him stayed with her, not just his music, but the way he looked grateful for every bite of food. It had been a long time since anyone thanked her that sincerely. By noon, the diner was busier than usual. Workers from nearby shops filled the booths, the smell of coffee and fried eggs filling the air. Mr. Turner was in his usual bad mood, shouting orders at the cook and complaining about tips. Emily kept her head down, smiling through the noise. Her life was simple. Work, pay bills, take care of her brother. Repeat him, but she carried herself with quiet pride. Around lunchtime, the doorbell jingled again. Emily looked up and her heart skipped. It was him, Jack, the man from last night. He wasn't as soaked this time. Though his clothes were still rough and worn, he carried the same old guitar case, a little cleaner now. When he saw Emily, he smiled. "Didn't think I'd come back, did you?" he said softly. Emily smiled back. "Well, I didn't think you'd risk another scolding from my boss," she teased. Mr. Turner immediately frowned. "You again?" he said sharply. "I told you last night." Jack held up a hand. "Relax, sir, I'm not here to beg," he said calmly. "Just wanted to thank the young lady for her kindness." His voice carried a confidence that surprised Emily. There was something dignified about him, even in old clothes. He pulled out a small harmonica from his pocket and said, "Would you mind if I play something short just for her?" Before Mr. Turner could stop him, Jack lifted the harmonica to his lips. A soft, sweet tune filled the diner, lighter than the haunting guitar melody from last night. But just as captivating, the notes danced through the air, playful and full of life. Customers began turning their heads, smiling, tapping their feet. One man even whistled along when the song ended. People clapped again, louder this time. A little boy near the counter shouted, "Play another one." And Jack laughed, bowing his head. "Maybe next time, kid," he said. Mr. Turner, seeing how customers reacted, suddenly changed his tone. "Well," he said, pretending to sound generous, "maybe a bit of music isn't so bad for business." Emily rolled her eyes but said nothing. She brought Jack a cup of coffee and a muffin. "On the house," she whispered. Jack shook his head. "I can't keep taking from you," he said. "You gave me food when I had nothing." "That's not something I forget," Emily smiled. "It's just coffee, Jack. You earned it." They talked for a while as customers came and went. Jack told her he had been traveling from city to city, playing on the streets, sometimes in shelters, sometimes under bridges. "People look at me and see a bum," he said with a small smile. "But I used to have a house bigger than this diner." Emily tilted her head, surprised. "What happened?" she asked. Jack's eyes grew distant. "Life happened," he said quietly. "One mistake, one tragedy, and everything you built can disappear." She didn't push further. She could see pain behind his calm expression. Instead, she told him about her brother, how she worked double shifts to keep him in school. Jack listened carefully, nodding. "You're doing good, Emily," he said. "It's not easy being the one who holds everything together." No one had ever said that to her before. She looked down, hiding the small smile that crept to her lips. As the afternoon faded, Jack packed his guitar and stood to leave. Before he did, he turned to the customers. "Thank you for listening," he said. "Remember, kindness doesn't need an audience." The diner grew quiet for a moment, and then someone clapped again. This time, everyone joined in. When Jack walked out the door, Emily followed him with her eyes until he disappeared around the corner. She didn't know who he really was, or why he carried that old guitar like it was his whole life. But she knew one thing. There was more to him than anyone could see. That evening, as she closed up the diner, Mr. Turner muttered something about keeping the music thing going if it brings customers. Emily smiled to herself. She didn't care about his sudden change of heart. All she cared about was the strange warmth she felt when Jack played, something that made the world seem a little better. And somewhere down the road, Jack walked into the setting sun, humming softly, thinking about the kind waitress who had fed him when no one else would, In his heart, he made a quiet promise. He'd come back one day, not as the drifter with a guitar, but as the man he truly was. The world had forgotten his name, but soon it would remember. The following afternoon was calm, sunlight washing over the diner windows like nothing bad had ever happened there. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the sound of chatter and clinking dishes. Emily moved between tables as usual, her apron slightly wrinkled, her hair tied up in a messy bun. She looked tired but peaceful. For once the day felt normal, but deep down, she kept wondering about Jack. The quiet man with the guitar who'd played his heart out for a bowl of soup. Just when she thought she wouldn't see him again, the bell above the diner door jingled softly. Emily turned, and there he was. Jack walked in slowly, his guitar case slung across his shoulder. His clothes were still old but cleaner. His face looked calmer, almost proud. He greeted her with a nod and a warm smile. "Afternoon, Emily," he said. She couldn't help smiling back. "You came back," she said. "You still owe me a song." He chuckled, setting his guitar down near a booth. "Then I guess I'd better make it count," he said. A few customers noticed him and whispered, "Remembering the music from before, mister." Turner frowned from behind the counter, already ready to complain. "If he's not ordering food, he's out," he barked. Emily sighed quietly, but before she could speak, Jack pulled out a few crumpled bills from his pocket and placed them on the counter. "Coffee," he said, "and something sweet if you have it." That shut the manager up. Emily poured him a hot cup. "You really didn't have to," she said softly. Jack smiled. "Last time you fed me, this time I pay for both." He took a slow sip. Closing his eyes as the warmth hit him, for a moment he just sat there, quiet and thoughtful. Then, without warning, he picked up his guitar and began to play. The first few notes were soft, slow like a story told from memory. Then the melody grew, filling the room with a deep emotion that made everyone stop talking. It wasn't just music, and it was something alive. His fingers danced across the strings faster and faster, until the tune shifted into something powerful and heartbreaking. Emily stood frozen, completely lost in the sound. When he began to sing, it felt like time had stopped. His voice was rough but soulful, carrying years of pain. The lyrics spoke of losing everything, of wandering roads alone, of meeting someone kind who reminded him of who he used to be. The song told his story without needing to say his name. Emily realized the song was about her, about that rainy night when she'd given him food and hope. The diner was silent, no one moved, not even Mr. Turner. When the last chord rang out, the sound lingered in the air like a goodbye. Then a burst of applause broke out, louder than before. Some customers stood, clapping with tears in their eyes. One woman placed a $20 bill on Jack's table, saying softly, "That was beautiful." Jack nodded, humbled, but his eyes were on Emily. "You see?" he said quietly. "Kindness doesn't go unnoticed, it changes things." Emily smiled, though her heart felt heavy with emotion. "That was incredible," she whispered. He shrugged slightly. Just a song, but she knew it wasn't. When the crowd calmed down, Jack packed his guitar again. He looked around the diner as if memorizing every detail. "I won't forget this place," he said. "You gave me more than food. You gave me reason." Emily tilted her head, confused. "Reason for what?" she asked. Jack smiled mysteriously. "You'll see." As he left, the bell jingled once more. Emily watched through the window as he disappeared into the golden sunset. She didn't know who he really was, but she could feel there was something different about him, something hidden. His posture, his words, even the way he played, none of it fit the image of a homeless drifter. He carried himself like a man who had once lived in a different world. That night when Emily returned home, she couldn't sleep. The melody from his song echoed in her mind. She opened her small notebook and wrote down one sentence. "Kindness is never wasted." She didn't know why, but she felt those words mattered. Maybe they were the start of something bigger, a turning point neither she nor Jack yet understood. Far across town, in a dimly lit apartment, Jack sat by a window with his guitar resting beside him. He took out a phone from his jacket pocket, old, scratched, but still working on dad, and scrolled through pictures. One photo showed him years younger, in a suit, standing on a stage beside a record label banner. Another showed him shaking hands with business partners. He smiled sadly, whispering to himself, "Tomorrow?" He looked out at the night sky, thinking about the diner, the waitress who gave him food when no one else would, and the way her kindness had reminded him of the person he used to be. Jack wasn't just a drifter. He was a man testing the world, trying to find if compassion still existed. And now he knew it did. Tomorrow everything would change. But Emily didn't know that yet for now. All she had was the memory of a song that touched every soul in that little diner, and a strange hope that maybe, just maybe, that man would come back again. Not as a stranger, but as someone the whole town would soon remember that night. The wind howled outside the small diner as Emily finished cleaning the last table. The place was quiet now, only the hum of the old refrigerator breaking the silence. She looked at the empty booth where Jack had sat earlier that day. It still felt warm somehow, as if his music had left a mark in the air. She sighed softly, wondering where he had gone, wondering why someone so talented had ended up on the streets. When she finally stepped outside, the cold air bit at her cheeks. The streets were dim and lonely. She pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders and started walking home. Her shoes splashed through puddles left from yesterday's rain. As she passed a street corner, she thought she heard the faint sound of a guitar, a soft melody echoing through the quiet night. She paused and listened, but the sound faded. Maybe it was just her imagination. The next few days went by as usual. Customers came and went. Life returned to its small, repetitive rhythm. But Emily noticed something strange. Every morning when she arrived at work, there was a single rose lying near the diner's door. Fresh and red, she didn't know who left it, but she had a feeling it was Jack. When she told her co-worker Lisa, the older woman laughed. "Maybe your guitar man's got a crush on you." Emily blushed, waving her hand. "No, he's just kind," she said, but inside, she wasn't so sure. One quiet afternoon, the bell jingled again, and there he was, Jack. But this time something was different. He looked healthier, more alive. His beard was trimmed, his clothes clean and pressed. Emily blinked, surprised. "Jack?" she said. "You look human?" He said with a grin. She laughed. "No, just good." He smiled, setting his guitar case beside him. "I had a good week," he said. "People liked my songs. I made enough to stay somewhere warm." Mr. Turner eyed him suspiciously from behind the counter. "You better be buying something this time," he said gruffly. Jack nodded, pulling out a wallet, a real one this time. "Dinner for the lady, too," he said, placing 2 crisp $50 bills on the counter. Turner's eyebrows shot up. "For her?" Jack looked at Emily. "For her," he repeated. "She deserves a good meal." Emily laughed softly, shaking her head. "You don't have to do that." "I know," Jack said. "That's why I want to." They sat together in a booth, sharing burgers and coffee. Jack was different tonight, lighter somehow. He told stories of the cities he'd traveled through, the people he'd met, the songs that had carried him through the hardest times. Emily listened, completely drawn in. "You've seen so much," she said. "I've never even left this town." Jack looked at her kindly. "You don't need to travel far to change someone's world," he said. "You did it right here." There was a brief silence as they both smiled, and for a moment, it felt like the diner wasn't just a place, it was the heart of something important. A small miracle born from kindness. When the meal was done, Jack reached for his guitar. "One more song," he said, "just for you." He began to play, but this time the tune was different. Soft, gentle and warm like sunlight after a long winter. The lyrics spoke of finding light in dark places, of strangers who showed mercy when the world had none. Emily's eyes glistened as she listened. Every note carried gratitude, and though he never said her name, she knew the song was about her. When he finished, the entire diner erupted in applause again. Some even recorded him on their phones. The music felt magical, real, something pure in a noisy world. Jack smiled humbly, then looked at Emily. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not turning me away that night after he left." Mr. Turner approached Emily with a rare smile. "That man's got talent," he said. "If he keeps coming here, maybe we'll get more customers." Emily rolled her eyes. "You only hear dollar signs, don't you?" Turner shrugged. "I hear whatever pays the bills." Later that night, as Emily was closing, she noticed an envelope under the salt shaker where Jack had sat. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. "I owe you more than a meal, Emily. I'll be back soon, and when I do, I'll make sure you never have to serve another table again." Her heart raced as she read it again. She didn't understand what he meant, but his handwriting was neat, deliberate, and confident. Not like a man with nothing. Days turned into weeks and Jack didn't return. The diner went back to its slow rhythm. But Emily couldn't shake the memory of that promise. Every time she wiped the booth where he'd sat, she wondered if he meant it. Then, one evening, a black car pulled up outside the diner, the windows tinted, the paint polished. It looked out of place in that small town. Emily stepped outside just as the back door opened, and there he was, Jack, dressed in a suit, clean-shaven, and standing tall. The same calm smile, but behind it a new confidence. "Evening, Emily," he said softly. She froze, her heart pounding. "Jack?" He nodded. "Told you I'd come back." But what he said next would change everything. And Emily, still in her waitress apron, had no idea she was standing face to face with a man the world once called a millionaire. The next morning the sun rose bright over the quiet little town, but inside the diner, the air was thick with whispers. Word had spread fast. A sleek black car had pulled up outside last night, and the homeless guitarist everyone thought was a drifter had stepped out in a tailored suit. Emily hadn't said much about it. She had spent most of the night awake, replaying every word Jack had said, every smile, every song, and especially his last promise. "You'll never have to serve another table again." When she walked into work that morning, even Mr. Turner looked unsettled. He was pacing near the counter, checking the door as if waiting for someone. "You look nervous," Emily said lightly, hanging her coat. Turner frowned. "You didn't tell me your little friend was some kind of rich man," he muttered. "Reporters called here asking about him this morning." Emily blinked. "Reporters? Why?" He shrugged. "Apparently he's some big name in the music industry, disappeared years ago, thought to be dead or broke, and now he's back." Emily froze, her mind spinning. Could that really be true? The man who had sat at her booth, hungry and quiet, the man who played for soup and coffee, a music legend. It didn't make sense. Around lunchtime, the bell above the door jingled again. The diner fell silent. Jack stood there, dressed simply this time, no suit, just a clean shirt and jeans, but his posture, his calm confidence, it was different. Mr. Turner straightened his tie nervously. Welcome back, sir," he stammered. Trying to sound polite, Jack's lips twitched, amused. "Now you call me sir," he said softly. "Yesterday I was a problem." Turner forced a laugh. "Just business, you know, didn't recognize talent when I saw it." Jack ignored him and looked straight at Emily. "Can we talk?" he asked. Emily nodded, wiping her hands on her apron, and led him outside. They stood near the diner's old sign, the smell of coffee and rain mixing in the air. "You disappeared for weeks," she said, "and then showed up in a car that costs more than this building. Who are you really, Jack?" He sighed, looking out at the road. "I wasn't lying about losing everything," he said quietly. "But before that, I built something big. I was a music producer, owned a label called Silverline Studios. I signed some of the biggest artists in the country." Emily's mouth fell open. "Wait, you owned Silverline?" He nodded slowly. "Until I lost it. My wife got sick. My business partner stole from me. Lawsuits drained everything. When she died, I walked away. I wanted to see if kindness still existed in a world that took everything from me." Emily's chest tightened. "And you came here," she said softly, "pretending to be homeless." He smiled faintly. "I didn't pretend. I was homeless for a while, until music and strangers helped me find my way again. But you were the only one who treated me like a person when I had nothing to offer." She didn't know what to say. Her throat felt tight. The truth was almost too big to believe. "So why come back?" she asked. Jack looked at her seriously. "Because I meant what I said, Emily. I bought this diner." She blinked. "You... what?" He handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter with legal papers and her name on them. "Half of it is yours," he said simply. "You're the reason this place survived. I want you to manage it. Not as a waitress, but as my partner." Tears welled in her eyes. "Jack, I can't accept this. I didn't do anything special." He shook his head. "You did. You showed compassion when no one else did. You made me believe again. She looked at the papers, her hands trembling. But why me? Jack smiled. Because when everyone saw a beggar, you saw a man. Just then, Mr. Turner stepped outside, his face pale. Emily, he said quickly. He's serious. He's already paid off the lease. The diner belongs to him now. Jack turned toward him calmly. Not anymore, he said. Half belongs to her. Turner's jaw dropped. Her? She's just a waitress. Jack's eyes hardened. She was the only one who didn't treat me like trash. That's worth more than titles or money, Turner stammered. I didn't mean, Jack interrupted. You meant every word that night. But don't worry, I'm not here for revenge. Just remember, respect doesn't cost anything. He turned back to Emily, his tone soft again. I'll be leaving town for a while. I have meetings to attend, a new foundation to set up. But this place, it's yours to run. I trust you. Emily wiped her tears, speechless. Jack, I don't even know how to thank you. He smiled gently. You already did. That night with a bowl of soup. As he walked back toward his car, the townspeople watched from across the street, whispering in awe. Emily stood frozen, clutching the letter to her chest. Her world had changed in a single moment. Not because she'd found a millionaire, but because her kindness had found its way back to her, multiplied 1,000 times. When the black car drove away, Emily looked up at the diner sign, the sunlight catching the faded paint, and whispered, Harmony Cafe. The name he'd chosen. She smiled through her tears, knowing this was just the beginning of something beautiful, something honest, born not from luck or wealth, but from one simple act of kindness. The following week, the diner buzzed with new energy. The old sign had been replaced, shining proudly in gold letters. Harmony Cafe. People came not just for food anymore, but to hear the story of a waitress who showed kindness to a homeless man, only to discover he was a millionaire in disguise. Emily could hardly believe how much things had changed. The once empty booths were now full, musicians dropped by to play, and families filled the room with laughter. Even the grumpy Mr. Turner, now a hired manager under her, smiled more often, though mostly because business was booming every morning. Emily arrived early, walking past the polished glass windows with pride. She was no longer just the waitress. She was the co-owner, the partner Jack had trusted. Still, she missed him. He had left town weeks ago, promising he'd return when things were ready. He sent short notes, postcards from cities she'd never seen, each one ending with the same words. Keep the music alive. One Saturday afternoon, a local newspaper crew arrived. The journalist, a young woman with bright eyes, smiled at Emily. Everyone's talking about you, she said. The millionaire who vanished, the waitress who believed in kindness. It's like something out of a movie. Emily blushed, shaking her head. It's not that special, she said. He just needed a meal, and I had soup. But deep down she knew it had become something bigger. Harmony Cafe wasn't just a diner now. It was a place of hope. People came to share their own stories. Struggling artists played for food. Travelers donated meals for the hungry. It was as if Jack's music had changed the air itself. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the bell above the door jingled. Emily turned and her breath caught. Jack stood there again, this time smiling wide. He looked healthier than ever, his eyes shining with quiet pride. Miss me? He teased. Emily laughed. Only every single day, she said, wiping her hands on her apron before hugging him. The customers who recognized him began whispering. One man even said, That's him, the guy from the papers. Jack waved politely before turning back to Emily. You did it, he said, looking around. This place, it's perfect. Emily smiled. You gave me the chance, she said. I just ran with it. Jack walked toward the small stage that had been built in the corner. The lights flickered softly. A microphone waiting. May I? He asked. Emily nodded eagerly. Always. He took his seat. adjusted the strap of his guitar, and began to play. The first few notes were gentle, familiar, the same melody he had played the night she first met him. But now it was richer, filled with hope instead of sorrow. His voice was strong, carrying through the room like warm sunlight. The crowd fell silent, listening. Some swayed to the rhythm, others closed their eyes. The lyrics told a new story, of second chances, of people who believe when others don't, of the power of kindness to rebuild what's broken. Emily stood near the counter, her eyes glistening, remembering that cold night, the bowl of soup, and the moment that changed everything. When the song ended, the cafe erupted in applause. People cheered, clapped, and even stood. Jack smiled humbly, setting the guitar aside. "Thank you," he said into the mic, "but you should thank her." He pointed to Emily, who froze as the crowd turned toward her. Jack continued, "Months ago, I walked into this diner with nothing but a guitar and hunger. Everyone looked away. Except her. She didn't see a homeless man. She saw a person. And that single act of kindness gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. Faith." Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks as the room clapped again. Louder this time, Jack stepped down from the stage, took her hand, and said softly, "This cafe isn't mine. Emily, it's ours, built on what the world forgets too often: compassion." After the crowd dispersed, the two sat by the window, watching the stars rise above the quiet street. "You know," Emily said with a soft laugh, "if someone told me a year ago that I'd co-own a cafe with a millionaire, I'd have laughed in their face." Jack smiled. "If someone told me a year ago that a waitress would save my soul, I'd have said the same." Outside, a busker strummed a guitar on the sidewalk. His case open for coins. Jack listened for a moment, then stood, walked outside, and placed $100 bill inside. The busker looked up in shock. "Thank you, sir," he said. Jack smiled. "Don't thank me," he said, glancing back at Emily through the glass. "Thank her. She taught me to never ignore a hungry musician." As the night deepened, the neon sign of Harmony Cafe glowed brighter than ever. Emily leaned against the doorframe, watching Jack greet the customers, laughter echoing through the air. The girl who once served coffee now stood beside a man who once lost everything, and together, they built something the world desperately needed. A place where kindness was the richest currency of all. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the big front windows of Harmony Cafe, turning the tables golden and warm. The smell of cinnamon rolls and brewed coffee filled the air. The sound of quiet laughter mixed with the clinking of dishes. Everything felt alive, peaceful, and full of meaning. Emily walked between the tables with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. Her steps matched the rhythm of a new life, one she'd never dared to dream of. Jack sat at his usual corner booth, a cup of coffee steaming beside him. He looked relaxed for once, not burdened by the weight of the past. His guitar rested against the seat, and he watched the morning unfold with a faint smile. To the customers, he was a celebrity now, the millionaire in disguise, the man who tested humanity and found hope again. But to Emily, he was just Jack, the quiet soul who had walked into her diner on a stormy night and changed everything. Around mid-morning, a television crew pulled up outside. A cheerful reporter stepped in, followed by a cameraman. "Good morning," she said brightly. "We're here from Channel 7 to film a segment on Harmony Cafe, the miracle diner that changed a man's life." Emily froze mid-step. "Wait, film?" she said. "Oh no, I'm not." But Jack chuckled softly. "You'll be fine," he said. "Just tell the truth. Soon." The cafe was filled with lights and microphones. Customers smiled and waved at the camera, and the reporter turned to Emily.
"Tell us what made you help a man who looked like he had nothing," she asked.
Emily hesitated, then spoke from the heart. "He was hungry," she said simply. "That's all I saw. Someone who needed help. I didn't do anything special. I just did what I'd hoped someone would do for me." The room went quiet for a moment. Even the reporter seemed moved. Jack watched her with pride in his eyes. When it was his turn, he leaned forward and said, "You see, I had everything once: money, fame, comfort. But I lost the most important thing: kindness. The world becomes loud and cruel when you forget what compassion feels like." Emily reminded me it still exists. After the interview, the crew packed up. leaving the cafe buzzing with excitement. Customers congratulated Emily, and people began sharing the story online within hours. Harmony Cafe was trending across the country. People donated to their Pay It Forward meal program, and strangers drove from miles away just to visit. But later that night, when the cafe emptied, Jack sat quietly at the counter. Staring into his coffee, Emily joined him, sensing something heavy in his silence. "You've been quiet all evening," she said softly. "Everything okay?" Jack looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I got a call today," he said. "From Los Angeles. They want me to come back, rebuild the label, start over." Emily's smile faded a little. "That's great, isn't it?" she asked, though her voice trembled slightly. Jack sighed. "It is, but it means leaving again, and I don't know if I can walk away from this." His eyes met hers. "From you?" She looked down, tracing circles on the counter with her fingertip. "You gave me this place, Jack," she said. "You gave me a new life. You don't owe me anything more." He shook his head. "It's not about owing, it's about belonging. You gave me a reason to start again. I don't want to lose that." For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the ceiling fan hummed softly above them. Then Emily smiled faintly. "Maybe you don't have to choose," she said. "Maybe Harmony doesn't need to be one cafe. Maybe it can be everywhere. Your label, your music. This place, all built on kindness." Jack looked at her thoughtfully. "A label that signs artists for their hearts, not their fame," he said slowly. "A movement instead of a business." He smiled. "I like that," Emily nodded, her eyes shining. "You said once that kindness changed your world. Maybe it's time to let it change others too." The next morning, Jack called his lawyer and made arrangements. By afternoon, they had a plan, Harmony Records, a label born from the spirit of Harmony Cafe, a place where struggling musicians could record their music for free, where proceeds would fund meals for the homeless. When the first announcement went live online, messages poured in. A label for hope. One article read, "The millionaire who started over from a diner," another headline said. But Jack only smiled at one photo, the one of him and Emily standing outside the cafe, both laughing under the golden sign. That night, he told her quietly, "I'll be gone for a few months to set things up, but I'll come back. This cafe is where it all began. It's home now." Emily nodded, hiding the ache in her chest. "I'll keep the coffee hot," she said with a soft smile. As Jack left that evening, guitar slung across his shoulder. The neon sign reflected in his eyes. He paused at the door, turned back, and said, "You were the only one who believed in a stranger, Emily. You didn't just save me, you reminded me who I was." And as the door closed behind him, Emily stood in the glow of Harmony Cafe, her heart full, knowing she'd never be the same again. She had fed a hungry man once, and somehow, that single act had rewritten both their destinies. Months passed, and Harmony Cafe had become more than just a local diner. It had turned into a symbol. People came from faraway towns to see the place where kindness began. The walls were decorated with Polaroid pictures of guests from all over the country. Some had written short notes on the photos. "Thanks for restoring our faith. Kindness lives here. Music and mercy, the perfect pair." Emily worked tirelessly, but now she worked with purpose, not survival. The cafe's donation jar was always full. The live stage hosted new voices every weekend. And the free meal board near the door overflowed with prepaid meal cards for those in need. Every day she thought of Jack, wondering what cities he was in, what songs he was writing, and when he would walk back through that door again. One cold December evening, the cafe was aglow with warm lights. A Christmas tree stood by the counter, covered with tiny paper ornaments customers had signed. Laughter and music filled the room. But there was still a quiet corner inside Emily's heart that missed the man who had started it all. She tried to stay cheerful for everyone, greeting customers with her usual warmth. But every time the bell over the door jingled, she looked up, half hoping it was him. Then one evening, just before closing, the bell rang again. A gust of cold air swept in, and the sound of slow footsteps echoed across the floor. Emily turned, and there he was, Jack, dressed in his dark coat, a soft smile playing at the corners of his mouth. His eyes looked tired but happy. Behind him, through the window, a black car idled in the snow. "Evening, partner," he said gently. Emily froze for a second before her face broke into a wide, tearful smile. "Jack," she whispered, rushing toward him. She threw her arms around him without thinking, and for a moment the whole cafe stopped. A few regulars clapped quietly. Others just smiled knowingly when they sat down. She noticed the faint wrinkles around his eyes, the silver in his hair that hadn't been there before. But his smile, that same quiet, peaceful smile, hadn't changed. "I kept the coffee hot just like I promised," she said. Wiping her tears and laughing softly, Jack grinned. "And I brought something better than coffee." He handed her a thick envelope. She hesitated. "Jack, if this is more money—" "I can't," he interrupted, shaking his head. "It's not money," he said. "It's ownership papers. You own Harmony Cafe now, completely. It's yours." Her mouth fell open. "Jack, why?" He leaned back, eyes soft. "Because it was never really mine. I just started the fire. You kept it burning." Emily covered her mouth, tears welling again. "You can't just give it away," she said. "This was your dream." He smiled faintly. "No, Emily, this was our dream. But now it's time for me to move to the next one." He told her about Harmony Records, how it had grown faster than anyone imagined. Artists from all over the world had joined. Concerts were raising funds for shelters and soup kitchens, and the Play for a Meal project, inspired by their first night together, had fed thousands. "Every musician who signs with us donates their first concert earnings to feed the hungry," Jack said proudly. "And it all started here, with one bowl of soup." Emily listened, her heart full. "You really changed the world," she whispered. Jack chuckled. "No, we did. I just had the microphone." Later that night, the cafe closed early and Jack picked up his guitar again. "One last song before I go," he said. He sat by the small stage, and as he strummed the first chord, the familiar melody filled the room. The same song he'd played the night she met him, but this time it carried something new, peace. The lyrics spoke of finding home, of strangers who became family, of hope reborn in small, quiet acts of love. Emily stood behind the counter, tears glistening, the melody wrapping around her like a memory. When he finished, the last note lingered in the air before fading into silence. The whole cafe clapped, but Jack's eyes were only on her. He set his guitar down, walked over, and said softly, "Promise me one thing." She nodded. "Anything. Never stop believing in people," he said. "Even when they don't deserve it. That's the only way the world gets better." She smiled through her tears. "I promise." The next morning, when she arrived at the cafe, the black car was gone, but a small box sat on the doorstep. Inside was Jack's old guitar pick and a handwritten note. "The music never ends. It just changes hands." Years later, people still told the story of Harmony Cafe, the waitress who gave a meal to a homeless man, and the millionaire who returned to give her the world. The cafe remained a place of laughter, songs, and second chances. And whenever a stranger walked in hungry or tired, Emily would smile, pour them coffee, and say, "Play something for me. Kindness sounds better with music."